I'm Ron Villanueva, joined by my good friend, Delegate Glenn Davis from the 84th District to give us a General Assembly update for our Coastal Virginia Chamber of Commerce. Glenn, how you doing, brother?
Doing great, Ron. Thanks for having me on. It's been rather interesting in the General Assembly, as I'm sure you've heard.
Well, I've been on sabbatical for quite some time. It's like coming back from a time warp. And coming back from this time warp, we know that COVID, the pandemic, has impacted severely our Hampton Roads region, our businesses, and our employees that work for our businesses. We know that you're in a special session right now called by the governor to address some of these budget shortfalls, some police reform issues, and in addition to some other new budgetary and monetary issues. Glenn, you want to talk a little bit about some of the issues that you're talking about during the session right now?
Sure, Ron. I mean, it's, unfortunately in the business community, it's not going to like to hear this, but we're playing defense again. Yes, we are up here talking about police reform, and that's one of the things that brought us up here, as well as the COVID situation. But it really has turned into another opportunity for the Democrats to take a swipe at Virginia small businesses and make the burdens even more onerous than what they did during regular session. For those that have not heard, for example, the mandatory sick leave, paid mandatory sick leave for small businesses is back on the table again. And I know that all of us as business owners care about our employees. We work with our employees, but to sit there and mandate on employers what they have to do for their employees, give them additional burdens, financial burdens, especially during this tough time, Ron, when the governor is literally putting small businesses out of business, is just absurd and asinine. So, but unfortunately, that's one of the things that we're talking about back up there. On the plus side, we're trying to provide liability protection for small businesses. We'll see where it goes. We're kind of facing the Democrats who don't like this. But we, except for businesses, if they're completely negligent, someone can't walk into your business 2 days later, end up with coronavirus and say, oh, it's because I went to that restaurant, so I'm going to sue them. And as we all know, a lot of businesses have to settle, Ron, just because the cost of fighting it is sometimes more than the cost of just settling it. So, we got to make sure that we don't have these kind of absurd lawsuits going around because people can. I mean, if there's a gross negligence, someone allows someone to cough in their food at a restaurant, completely understandable. Yes, you get sued. But during this particular time when the governor is making things difficult for small businesses, and things are so tight to maintain jobs, we can't keep piling on small business. We won't have an economy to come back to. And Ron, you're talking to probably the same number of small businesses that I'm talking to, and they really are making ends meet. There's been a lot of small businesses out there that have been carrying their employees, trying to help them through this tough time, while the business itself is having cash flow issues. And as the governor does more things to put onerous burdens on them, to try to shut them down, and then now to levy more of a financial obligation on them with the cost of additional paid sick leave, just makes things even worse. And Ron, what really is hypocritical is, while we're putting on this additional financial burden on small businesses, here's the Democratic Party saying that the House of Delegates, the Democratic House Caucus says the House of Delegates is going to meet remotely in our homes. We're not going to travel to Richmond, and we're still going to get per diem. And as we all know as small business owners, per diem is basically a non-taxable payment from an employer to an employee to reimburse for travel expenses, lodging, food, mileage, that sort of thing, right? So to see the Democrats throw out there, right after they decide that we're going to work remotely, that we're still going to get our $210 a day in per diem, but we're going to make it harder for small businesses, it's absurd. And never mind the fact that as small business owners, we all understand that we just broke IRS regulations with the use of per diem by doing that, which I think the Democrats finally figured out. But yeah, it says, do as I say, not as I do. Sooner or later, I think the Democrats are going to realize that if you hurt small businesses enough, they're just not going to be there. And then where do they think the tax revenue comes from?
I hear you. and that's what a lot of the states and municipalities are dealing with right now. They were leaning on the federal government to bail them out. Tax revenue is down all the way. I mean, Virginia, as you know, we're in the peak of our tourism season, and particularly like municipalities like Virginia Beach, who rely on the tourism industry, it's pretty decimated. So to see some of these new proposals, you've got to question. There's a lot of good intent there, but how do we pay for these things? For instance, governor's talking about new monies for HBCUs. I could understand that.
He's a little late to the table on that. I mean, Delegate Cole came to me during session wanting to put together new scholarships for students that go to HBCUs that didn't spend time, back home, inside the areas they grew up in, teaching and stuff. I thought it was a great bill. I signed on as a chief co-patron. Didn't get out of appropriations. The Democrats killed their own person's bill, and now the governor's coming to the table with HBCU monies. I mean, kind of a day late. Here's the thing: if you really value something, Ron, you and I both know, during good times, you show you value it by supporting it, and during bad times, you do as well. You don't get drugged to the table. The governor got drugged to the table on this. I mean, you don't get credit for being there when you've got to be hit over the head saying, okay, now we want this. It's, it was good legislation and good policy to support HBCUs before COVID hit. And for us to have to get drugged through this to do it, I think just flies in the face of HBCUs. And, if you want to show how important they are, then we should have done this as Josh Cole tried to do during session and make it happen then.
Well, I think one of the ways to look at historically Black colleges and universities they are job incubators. Mm-hmm. They are in urban centers. Yep. They stimulate research and growth. But you're right. I mean, it should have been a consistent investment throughout some of these budgets, and now all of a sudden it's showing up. There is another issue out there that I know the General Assembly's been working on, is like broadband access. And that's part of the governor's new budget proposal, correct? Where he's investing more in broadband access for communities.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. So, education is bringing this to the forefront. Ron, you've been in the General Assembly with me for years. You were there longer than I think I've still been there. And, you talk about virtual education, needing to have virtual education, what we can do virtually. The Democrats and teacher unions fight like the Dickens because, it flies in the face of tradition. And what's able to be done. Now all of a sudden COVID hits, and all of a sudden the teacher unions are, no, we can't go to school. We have to do this virtually. And oh yeah, we can actually do this virtually now. But the problem is obviously, like you said, broadband. So there's a huge investment in broadband, which once again, we started doing this. I would argue it's still a day late, dollar short. But at least we're starting to make that investment now. A lot to do with education, but it's also going to help tremendously workforce development. As you know, it's hard to bring businesses to an area where there's not high-speed internet. But if we can bring it, they'll come.
Well, Glenn, we've got a lot of issues to talk about. I mean, and they keep piling on. I mean, prior to July 1, the General Assembly passed several small business initiatives. A lot of times the small business community fought back against it. I know the Virginia Chamber of Commerce fought against, minimum wage tax, minimum wage increases, parental sick leave, those kind of things, mandatory minimums. Is there a moratorium, particularly like with the minimum wage issue? Is that in place now? Is that moving forward, or is there a moratorium on that?
It's pushed out. So the governor extended it out. It goes in to effect. Was it March? I think it's March of 2021. Ron, a lot of the bills that were going to kill small businesses. It's kind of funny. They said that stuff like collective bargaining, raising minimum wage, all these bills that we all know was bad for small business. They swore was good for small business, good for the economy. Then when the economy tanks to COVID, a light bulb goes on their head. Oh yeah, we can't do this. Well, why can't we do this now? If it's going to help the economy, keep it. And they're like, yeah, we didn't really, we realized it doesn't help the economy. But instead of getting rid of it, they just pushed it out. So the I guess for an analogy, the bullets are still heading our way. It's just that we have to fire the gun for, another 8 months or whatever it is. So the great thing is it gives us a chance to get through another session to maybe undo it, albeit I'm not quite sure, the legislators are still the same, so I'm not quite sure the votes change. But yes, everything that the small business community heard that passed, they were scared about, is still in effect, although a good chunk of them have been delayed until after session next year for implementation.
To all our audience members, we're joined with Delegate Glenn Davis from the 84th District, long-term public servant in the Hampton Roads area, tremendous community leader. But a lot of you all don't know that Glenn is one of the top entrepreneurs in our state. Glenn, can you give advice to some of the small businesses that are trying to navigate through this COVID pandemic on how to stay afloat?
Yeah, I feel for them. I mean, as all of us know as entrepreneurs, it's hard enough to start a business. We know that 80% of small businesses fail in the first 2 years, and that's not when you're dealing with a pandemic or an overly regulatory state government. So I would say the first thing is there are a lot of support out there. There's a lot of support. There's grant programs at the local, state, and federal levels. There are some private things. The 30-Day Fund, which has been giving $3,000 grants to help small businesses stay afloat. Some of them even in Hampton Roads. So I would tell the small business owners and entrepreneurs to look for those grants that are out there. There are some at every level of government and some private entities. The second thing I've always told entrepreneurs when they come to see me and they're starting is there's a great program called SCORE. It's a organization of retired executive business professionals. And I mean, Ron, I appreciate your kind words about me, but these guys there are really amazing. These are top-notch level C-levels for decades that retired, that want to give back, have tremendous experience from everything from starting a business to taking it public. So I would tell them to reach out to those organizations. They are very familiar with helping guide through that. It's all free and provided, and reach out to organizations like that as well. And the last thing is you have a voice. You have a very large voice. They need to use it. Team up with the Chamber of Commerce, team up with the Coastal Virginia Chamber of Commerce, team up with NFIB, and make sure your voice gets heard. There is an attack on small businesses. I mean, the Democrats will say it's on business. They don't delineate between small and big. But as we all know, that these bills that are being passed, they hurt the small business owner more than the big business owner. Some businesses can afford it. Those starting out have a tougher time. But make sure that they voice their opinion, their opposition, and explain to legislators where this really makes a difference and how it impacts jobs and the economy.
Well, I mean, when I served with you and many of our Democratic colleagues, I always scratch my head, to listen to the other side and try to understand their argument. A lot of Democrats are small business owners, and they're trying to find a balance. I mean, are there any measures that you see that you can agree on with the Democrats that are put forth during this General Assembly session?
Definitely. I mean, Ron, one thing, you were the same way when you were in the General Assembly. You work across the aisle, right? You create those win-wins. And, I was the one that, worked to find, the reform the Medicaid, system back in the day in 2014. We finally did it in 2018. And so I'm definitely willing to work across the aisle. And I've done it on many occasions in the past with the Democrats. And there are some. But the issue, Ron, the big issue we're having is they actually look at businesses kind of as unlimited pockets. I mean, if you family leave, I mean that's one right there. We can all sit down and talk about family leave programs, and can we build out a good program that allows everyone to have good family leave? We probably can't, and we can probably do it in a way that doesn't put this huge additional burden on the business community. However, Ron, we have to be invited to the table. We have to be also, there has to be a desire to pass good policy, not just a good soundbite. And I will tell you right now, there's too much, emphasis on passing that good soundbite as opposed to passing good policy. So I think that there are win-win solutions. You brought many of them to the table during your tenure. I hope I'm following those footsteps, with that same type of bringing, kind of win-win solutions to the table. But there has to be willing participants on both sides. And some of the Democrats are. I've got some good friends, as you had, over there that are willing to sit down. But overall, there's got to be that by leadership, that desire to bring both sides, not caring who gets the credit, as opposed to just throwing stuff out there.
Glenn, let me ask you, as you know, I'm a parent who has a child and getting ready to head back to college. A lot of folks are ambivalent towards letting their children go back to college. You're seeing like a hybrid model of online learning, virtual learning, in-person learning, but we're seeing COVID spike up in some areas. I mean, how do you foresee the state college system adapting? Do you see, and how do you think the General Assembly is going to react? Do you think you're going to see some tax increases, tuition freezes, cuts? I mean, where do you see this all going, Glenn?
Well, tuition freezes definitely. I mean, I think that's been resolved. But I'll give you an idea of the things I don't like. I don't like when you have a university that says, okay, if you're going to come back to campus and live on campus, you're going to sign here. And if we have to shut down and go virtual, you're still obligated to pay the full cost of your room and board and everything, as if you were here, even though we're going to kick you out because we're not going to be on campus. You don't get to do that. The problem that we have as a college system, there are a lot of capital costs. There's a lot of debt service going on. We have very large campuses with a lot of, great buildings on them. And there's a business model around a college that allows them to cover their costs in the debt service. The problem is when students aren't on campus and they're not paying room, board, tuition and stuff like that, they're not doing the meal plans, the money's not there to cover the cost of university. So it's a problem. And it's something that, we need to be prepared for, and we need to be able to adjust for. So how this works, I'm not sure. I know the universities have the autonomy for each one to decide. A number of them have said they're going to go online, and I think that's the case. I'm very concerned about K-12. I mean, Ron, in high school, I think, people are able to learn remotely, although it's still a lot more difficult to keep high school students' attention. But when you start talking elementary school, it's next to impossible. When you start talking students with certain disabilities, it's almost next to impossible to deliver the instruction and the education, remotely through a screen like this. So I think we have to come up with real solutions. And I've seen some states, I've seen some localities that are doing that. I wish the conversation wasn't we can't, and it was how can we. There's been, I think, way too much of a jump. Ron, you and I are entrepreneurs, right? I mean, any entrepreneur listening to this right now knows exactly what we're talking about. You never start the conversation as why can't we? You started with how can we? And that's how you innovate. There's no doubt in my mind that we could do school and do it safely at all levels. But that had to be where the emphasis was from day one. The governor had to give clear, concise, edict, going into this that, I'd like to see everyone going online. We're going to give the flexibility, and he's not going to come down with a heavy hand and say, no, you can't. There was way too much uncertainty. Virginia Beach was going back and forth depending on what week it was based on the governor's comments. And we got to the point where it's just, okay, it's easier just to not do it. And there may be some politics involved in that. But I'm willing to bet if you put a whole bunch of entrepreneurs in a room, Ron, we'd have everyone back to school in their classrooms in a very safe manner, and every teacher and parent would be happy. But that's not what happened.
Well, I mean, you're a sports fan just like me. The NBA has a great example of like working within the bubble and where they can try to do these things. I mean, do you see the school system is trying to do those similar things?
So Virginia Beach was a prime example. If you look at our superintendent, I mean, he was trying to put that together. I thought he actually did put a really good plan together. The school board, hated it. Well, not the whole school board, some of the school board. And they don't, good chunk of them, the majority did not want to go back to school, and so be it. And that's, the school board's prerogative. So some school systems took the easy way out. Some superintendents, like I think the one in Virginia Beach, did a heck of a job trying to come up with a plan. Some school board members also, trying to come up with a plan, but the rest of the school board said, no, we're just going to do it remotely. And I think that's the easy way out. I think it's the chicken way out. here's the deal, Ron, you and I, you know, in our businesses having to take some time off or do things slowly, we hurt our revenue for a year, maybe a year and a half, right? Well, we can recover. But when you start talking about kids in school, they don't get that 5th grade year back. They don't get that 6th grade year back. You have 1 year that you know isn't as that you miss that foundation. You're all of a sudden you've hurt the foundation that you have to build upon for your future success, and it impacts what your full potential is in life. So this whole idea of we can go back, we can't go back. I heard some teachers talking about our students are great. They'll adapt. Yeah, no, they won't. They may adapt, but that adaptation does not mean that they're going to get the best education that they need to compete nationally and globally in our 21st century economy. We took the easy chicken way out to the detriment of our students, and it's plain and simple. Am I going to say that there never should be a case where we wouldn't have to stay home? I'm not going to say that, but I can sure as heck tell you that the majority of the emphasis was not on how can we go back. It was we can't go back. And that's what annoys the heck out of me when you see a whole bunch of government bureaucrats get together to figure something out. You want to solve a problem, bring in the entrepreneurs, the people that's what they do. They solve problems, and some of them are good ideas. A lot of them are bad ideas. But you get us on the table, we'll find out the bad ideas really quickly, throw them out the window, and focus on the good ideas. I think you're seeing some of that in some areas. I think you're seeing it in some areas around the nation. But in Virginia, yeah, we dropped the ball.
Well, Glenn, I love that passion in you, man. I mean, I see you're a great public advocate, a public servant. Do you see yourself running statewide in the next couple of years again, or where's Glenn Davis at?
There may be an announcement coming very soon. I had a conversation with Shelley last week. I didn't think, Ron, I ran 4 years ago for lieutenant governor, spent 150 nights on the road. Shelley and I made a lot of really good friends around the state. I've been asked if I'd reconsider that. A couple years ago, when we became #1 for business and job growth, which was my passion when I ran, I thought, okay, I don't see me running again statewide. And then the elections happened. Businesses got crushed last year in the General Assembly. The governor added on to it after this COVID thing. I've been asked to reconsider and get back out there. And I think you're going to see an announcement here in the very, very near future. And I'm going to go make some new friends around the state.
Well, Team Villanueva looks forward to hearing that announcement from you, brother.
Ron,
the Coastal Virginia Chamber of Commerce as well. We appreciate you coming on board and talking about issues, and we invite you to come on anytime to help give us some updates, maybe some entrepreneurial business spins. We are blessed to have you in attendance today. Thanks, Glenn.
Well, Ron, thank you for having me. And if I can leave one message at the end of this thing to all the business owners, entrepreneurs, look, we're going to turn this ship around. I mean, it may be a little bit of an aircraft carrier in a pond right now, but Virginia's economy did not drop as much as we thought it would because it was so strong to begin with. We are fighting for our small businesses. We are going to push back on a lot of this stuff, and we are going to get it right-sided again, Ron. And all those people that are investing their blood, sweat, tears, and resources to start their businesses in Virginia, it will pay off. They have a lot of people fighting for them, whether it's people like you out there in the private sector now doing it, or me so honored to do it in the public sector. So we're going to get it right for you, and just please keep fighting.
Thanks, Glenn. God bless. Take care, and give my love to the show.
Will do. Same with Kathy. I'll catch you soon, Ron.
Take care. Bye.